In Congress, Jasmine Crockett stands before the nation and exposes Melania Trump for hiding her husband's betrayals. The silence ends, the truth explodes, and the room freezes under the weight of her words. Cameras roll, hearts pound, and America can't look away. Is this the moment the truth finally takes back its power? Stay with us. This is a story worth every second of your time. Morning light flooded the U.S. Capitol, turning the marble walls into ice. Every seat was taken, every camera locked on the stage. On the wall, a glowing screen read, "Hearing on the silence contract." Reporters whispered like thunder before a storm. The air was tight electric, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Melania Trump walked in first, tall, composed, her heels striking like gunfire. Her face was calm, but her eyes cut through the room like a blade. Then Jasmine Crockett stood slow and deliberate, no papers, only a single red pen in her hand, a weapon of truth. The silence cracked when Jasmine spoke, voice low but dangerous. "We're not here to talk about love," she said. "We're here to ask, how much is honor worth?" Melania leaned forward, fire in her eyes. "I didn't come to be humiliated," she hissed. "I came because you forced me to face lies about myself." The tension from the opening exchange still hung in the air like smoke when Jasmine took a slow step forward. Her heels echoed through the chamber. The lights dimmed slightly as a massive screen lit up behind her. She lifted a folder marked in red evidence. Her voice was calm, but every syllable cut like glass. "Let's go back to 2006, she began, eyes locked on Melania. "The year your husband had an affair with a European model." The National Enquirer got the story. They had names, photos, witnesses, but 3 days later that article vanished, completely wiped. The room murmured, reporters scribbling furiously. Jasmine raised her hand, silencing them. "And on that exact day, $5 million was transferred from Trump Organization to your private family trust." She clicked the remote. The screen behind her changed. An email appeared in bold text. "Confidential marital settlement adjustment. $5,000 USD. Next to it, a certified bank record. "This," Jasmine said, voice rising slightly, "is not a gift. It's a price tag. The first payment for your silence." She turned toward the cameras, then back to Melania. "The world needs to understand you didn't marry a man, you married a contract." The audience gasped. The sound of shutters filled the air. Melania's composure shattered. She shot up from her chair, face flushed, eyes blazing. "You think you understand my marriage?" she shouted, voice cracking. "You have no idea what it's like to wake up and see your family dragged through filth every day. I stayed quiet to protect my son, to stop the scandal from destroying his life." Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. Reporters leaned forward. Even the chairman froze. Jasmine didn't move. She waited for the silence to return before speaking, her tone low and sharp as a knife. "If it was about motherhood," she said slowly, "why was there a contract? Why was there money involved?" She stepped closer. A mother doesn't need an invoice to stay silent for her child. Every camera turned back to Melania, whose jaw tightened, as though she might break it from the pressure. The atmosphere thickened like storm clouds. Melania slammed her palm on the desk, the sound echoing off the marble walls. Her voice trembled but carried raw defiance. "I did what any woman would do after being betrayed under the spotlight," she said. "I chose silence to survive." The audience went dead quiet. Her words lingered, hanging heavy between them, like smoke from a gun. Jasmine's reply came measured, deadly calm. "The problem is," she said, "you didn't just survive, you profited. You lived on the money of truth." Her words hit like a hammer. The chairman's gavel struck the desk, calling for order. Cameras flashed nonstop. Melania sank back into her chair, face pale but eyes burning cold. Her hand clenched into a fist on the table. The room buzzed with whispers and tension. The first real crack in her armor had finally appeared. The chamber still trembled from the first confrontation when Jasmine leaned forward, eyes glinting under the harsh white lights. Her voice cut through the whispers like a blade. "Let's move to 2011, she said, each word slow, deliberate. "That year, Donald Trump was caught in another affair, this time with a television host. The tabloids had everything, messages, recordings, hotel logs. But within days, the story disappeared. And exactly 1 week later," she paused, holding up a printed document. Your parents, Mrs. Trump, received expedited residency in the United States. Not months, not years, days. The room erupted with murmurs. The chairman called for silence. Jasmine stepped toward the projection screen, clicking a remote. A fax appeared in full view. She read it aloud, her tone tightening with every word. Fax from the law office of Melania Trump to the Department of Homeland Security, request for expedited green card. Parents of Mrs. Trump. She raised her finger, pointing to the bottom line highlighted in yellow. Note expedited per White House instruction. The chamber went dead silent. You traded your silence for citizenship, Jasmine declared. You turned the White House into a customer service desk for personal favors. Gasps rippled through the audience as reporters leaned closer. Melania shot up from her chair, fury flashing across her face. My parents committed no crime, she shouted, voice trembling but fierce. I only wanted them safe. I didn't ask for charity. I took what I deserved. Her hands slammed against the desk, echoing across the marble room. The camera zoomed in her jaw, tight, her breath ragged. You think you can shame me for protecting my family? She snapped. I did what any daughter would do if she had the power to do it. The heat in her voice filled the air like smoke. Jasmine's response came cold and steady. Protecting family doesn't mean exploiting a nation's laws, she said. Your parents were fast-tracked because you knew how to keep secrets. That's not justice. That's a transaction. She took another step forward, lowering her voice so it struck harder. You didn't protect your family, Mrs. Trump. You used America to pay their bill. The words landed like bullets, each one heavier than the last. The photographers clicked relentlessly, their flashes slicing through the tension. Melania let out a short, bitter laugh, half challenge, half confession. If you were me, she said, eyes narrow, you'd understand. In a world built by men, silence is the only way a woman survives. The room held its breath. Jasmine didn't blink. Her reply came like thunder after lightning. And because of women like you, she said, truth has to die so you can live. The chamber fell completely still, no sound, no movement. Only the endless, rhythmic clicks of the cameras remained like the heartbeat of a nation, watching its illusions crack. The silence after Jasmine's last words was unbearable, like the air itself had frozen. Then she took a slow breath and lifted another folder, black, this time heavier. Her voice dropped, lower, darker. Let's talk about 2018, she said, every syllable slicing through the tension. The year your husband's scandal with an adult film star broke across every headline in America. The year the world saw the truth, and the year you signed a silence contract worth $30 million. Gasps rippled through the audience. Melania's face hardened, but her fingers twitched on the table. Jasmine continued louder now. Here it is, she said, holding up a printed agreement sealed with a golden emblem. Clause number 7. The beneficiary retains $30 million in assets on the condition of maintaining perpetual silence. She turned to the big screen behind her. The document filled the wall, the ink, the signatures, the date. The camera zoomed in, flashes exploding like gunfire. Then Jasmine pressed a button. A faint, familiar voice came from the speakers, cold and transactional. Just keep it quiet. You'll get what we discussed. The voice of Donald Trump filled the chamber like thunder. The entire room froze. Melania's composure snapped. She shot to her feet, her chair screeching across the floor. Her voice cracked with fury. You don't know anything about me, she cried. If I spoke, the world would explode. I stayed silent to protect this country from collapse. Her words trembled, but her eyes burned wild, unyielding. Jasmine stood motionless, letting the sound of Melania's rage die. When she finally spoke, her tone was pure steel. No, she said, you stayed silent to protect your throne. Truth has never destroyed a nation, only lies ever could. The room erupted in whispers, the crowd stunned. Melania leaned forward, shouting over the noise. You don't understand power, she screamed. It swallows everything, even dignity. You think speaking truth makes you win. Her voice broke on the last word, echoing off the marble walls. The cameras swung between them, two women locked in a storm. Jasmine took one step forward, her voice calm but razor sharp. No, she said, but telling the truth makes me nothing like you. The words landed like a punch. The audience went completely still. The tension in the air was suffocating. Even the security guard stopped breathing. Melania's hands shook as she stared back at Jasmine, face pale, but eyes full of defiance and pain. The chairman didn't move. No one did. For a long, unbearable second, there was nothing but the sound of the overhead lights humming and the cameras clicking, slow and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The spotlight beamed down on the two women, one bathed in light, unflinching, the other half hidden in shadow, trembling but proud. In that frozen moment, the world saw the truth laid bare, the price of silence, the cost of power, and the collision of two souls on opposite sides of the same battlefield. The silence didn't fade. It thickened, stretching until it felt like time itself had stopped. The air in the chamber was dense and cold heavy with everything that had just been said. The bright white lights above seemed harsher now, cutting across faces, revealing exhaustion and disbelief. No one spoke. A few people in the audience bowed their heads. Others exhaled shakily like survivors of a crash. Then all at once the quiet shattered. A wall of sound burst through the room, cameras flashing, reporters shouting, the crack of shutters firing like gunfire. The chaos came alive again. Outside the chamber, every network in America had gone live. Fox News framed Melania as the woman who endured to protect her country. CNN filled the screen with breaking headlines in red. On Twitter, one question caught fire. Is silence a crime? Inside the hall, journalists hammered at their keyboards, their rapid typing blending with the endless strobe of camera flashes. The hearing no longer felt like a government session. It was a storm, a battlefield of noise and history colliding in real time. Melania sat motionless, the color drained from her face. The icy armor she once wore was gone, leaving only emptiness. Her lips trembled as she whispered into the microphone, "They'll destroy me." Jasmine didn't flinch. She stood still, her red pen clenched tightly in her hand, her expression unreadable, part fury, part sorrow. She didn't look at Melania. She looked straight at the semicircle of lawmakers, her voice steady and low. "How much have we paid to keep our silence?" she asked. The chairman's gavel cracked against the desk. "Order. Order in the chamber," he yelled, his voice shaking. Reporters shouted over him. "Is there more evidence? Is this criminal?" The noise rose again until one elderly senator leaned forward. "Congresswoman Crockett," he said softly, "do you have anything else to present?" Jasmine lifted her head, her eyes gleaming like a blade. "Yes," she said. "One final piece of evidence." The room froze. The storm was far from over. The room was silent again, the kind of silence that feels alive, heavy, electric, dangerous. Every pair of eyes followed Jasmine as she reached for a gray envelope sealed with the crimson wax of Congress. The air tightened when she stood and walked toward the center table heels, echoing like slow, deliberate gunshots. Her voice was calm, but it carried weight, the kind that fills every inch of space. This evidence, she said, was recovered from a private safe inside Trump Tower property belonging to Mrs. Melania Trump. The entire room erupted into whispers. The chairman slammed his gavel down. "Order," he demanded. The noise died instantly, but the tension only grew sharper. Jasmine tore the envelope open and lifted a small transparent bag. Inside was a USB drive sealed with evidence tape. Contained in this, she said, holding it high for the cameras, is a video recorded in 2018 by Mrs. Trump herself. A wave of shock moved through the audience. Melania's head snapped up. "That's a lie," she shouted, voice shaking. "You have no right," Jasmine didn't reply. She crossed to the projector, plugged the drive in, and stepped back. The screens came alive with light. The video flickered to life, a dimly lit bedroom, a mirror, and Melania Trump sitting before it, her hands trembling as she held a document. The sound of her breathing filled the speakers. Her voice, raw and breaking, echoed through the hall. "I'm signing this so my family can survive. If I ever speak, they will destroy us all." On the bottom corner of the screen, a timestamp appeared, 2018-05-17, 2341. The camera focused on her signature, a perfect match to the $30 million contract displayed earlier. A single gasp rippled through the room. Melania shot to her feet, eyes wide with panic. "That's my home," she screamed. "You have no right to show this. This is private." Her voice cracked under the weight of rage and fear. Jasmine turned slowly, her expression unshaken. "When you use public power to hide the truth," She said it stops being private. It becomes a crime against justice. The video froze on Melania's face, her eyes red, her lips trembling mid-plea, a tear glinting under the light. The image lingered impossible to look away from. Melania collapsed back into her chair, voice barely a whisper. "I just wanted to protect my son," she said almost to herself. Jasmine took one step forward, her tone low, deliberate. "No," she said, "you protected a dynasty and buried America's truth along with it." The crowd didn't move. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate. The spotlight split the room in half, Jasmine standing in full light resolute. Melania sunk into shadow, a fading figure of power. The chairman sat frozen, his gavel untouched. No one spoke. No one dared. Across the country, millions watched the moment a symbol of power fell, not by scandal or politics, but by the truth she once paid to silence. The chamber was empty now. The echoes of the gavel had faded into the marble walls, leaving only the faint hum of the lights above. The seats were abandoned, the microphones, dead papers, scattered like fallen feathers from a war of words. For the first time all day, there was no shouting, no flashing cameras, just stillness. The world outside was erupting, but here inside this cold hall of power, two women remained. Jasmine Crockett stood near the witness table, the red pen still in her hand. Melania Trump sat in the center row, her diamond ring glinting faintly under the dying light. The silence between them was not peace, it was aftermath. Jasmine turned slowly, her heels echoing on the marble. Her tone was soft, but her words cut through the quiet. "You once said, 'Be best.'" Her eyes narrowed slightly, voice steady as steel. "But how can anything be good?" she asked, "when the truth is locked away." The question hung in the air like a blade. Melania lifted her head, her eyes tired but defiant. Her voice, when it came, was low and deliberate. "You're young," she said. "You don't understand the power of silence. It keeps this country standing." The words were heavy, almost a whisper of self-conviction, a creed she had lived by now, sounding hollow under the weight of exposure. Jasmine stepped closer, her expression softening but her tone still sharp. "No," she said quietly. "It doesn't keep the country standing. It keeps the seats of the guilty warm." The sentence landed like a verdict. Neither woman moved. For a long frozen second, the only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights. Jasmine broke the silence first. She gathered the scattered folders from the table, the red one, the gray envelope, the documents marked confidential. She stacked them neatly, almost ceremonially, before tucking her red pen on top. Then she straightened her posture, tall, unbroken. Without another glance, she walked toward the doors. Melania stayed seated, motionless. The overhead lights flickered once. Her face was half lit, half consumed by shadow. The brightness reflected off her ring, that symbol of union, of wealth, of everything she had once thought was control. The camera zoomed in as she lowered her head. A single tear slipped free, rolling down her cheek and falling onto the diamond. It caught the light for a brief, blinding moment, then vanished. Cut to black. Outside those marble doors, the world was no longer silent. Within minutes, the silence contract had become the most searched phrase in America. News banners flashed across every major channel. The silence contract, the $30 million secret. Helicopters hovered above the Capitol. Journalists broadcast live from the steps. Commentators yelled over each other on split screens, turning outrage into theater. The country was split in two, not along party lines, but along something deeper, older, more human, the divide between comfort and conscience. Fox News hailed Melania as a victim of humiliation, a woman who suffered quietly for the stability of the nation. They showed clips of her, crying set to soft piano music, narrating her as a tragic figure, consumed by media cruelty. Across the dial, CNN replayed Jasmine's final words on loop. "It doesn't keep the country standing. It keeps the seats of the guilty warm." Analysts dissected it, replayed it, and declared it the quote of a generation. Twitter was ablaze. The phrase, "Is silence a crime?" trended for 72 hours straight. Some defended Melania. She did what any mother would do. Others sided with Jasmine. Truth isn't betrayal, it's patriotism. Memes spread faster than facts. One image, Jasmine standing beneath the congressional seal red pen, raised like a sword, became an instant icon. In homes across America, living rooms turned into debating halls. Elderly couples argued over coffee. Veterans stared silently at the screen, unsure what side they were on. Some said Jasmine had gone too far. Others whispered that maybe she'd only gone as far as the truth demanded. One talk show host asked the question that would define the week: is silence loyalty, or is it cowardice with better lighting? Inside the Capitol, the shockwaves turned to action. Within days, Congress launched a special ethics investigation into the misuse of federal funds related to personal settlements. Reporters dubbed it the Inquiry of Integrity. A subcommittee began drafting what they called the Public Truth Act, a proposal to ban any financial settlement that suppressed information involving public officials or their families. But outside the political machinery, something larger was stirring, something moral, even spiritual. In towns across the Midwest, churches discussed the case during sermons. Pastors asked, when did truth become optional? College students wrote essays titled, The Cost of Silence in American Power. In cafes, strangers debated not politics but ethics. The phrase "the silence contract" had escaped its origin. It was no longer about Melania or Trump. It had become a mirror held up to the nation. Meanwhile, Melania vanished from the public eye. No statements, no interviews. Her last words, "It keeps this country standing," became the subject of endless interpretation. Some said she meant stability. Others said she meant fear. Editorials asked if she was a villain or a casualty of power. One columnist wrote, "Perhaps Melania. Trump didn't believe in silence. Perhaps she simply didn't believe she had another choice." Jasmine, on the other hand, was everywhere, not by her own design, but because the world demanded her image. She was invited to every news show, every editorial board, every town hall. She refused most of them. When she did speak, she said the same thing. This isn't about one woman. It's about all of us who stayed quiet when we should have spoken. Her calmness only made her message louder. Inside the Capitol Rotunda, tourists began stopping before a framed still image. Jasmine Crockett, standing in the congressional chamber, light flooding over her while Melania sat in darkness behind her. Underneath the photo was a brass plaque that read, "The Silence Contract Hearing, 2025. The day America questioned what it means to stay quiet." Back in the empty chamber, the janitors moved silently, collecting papers from the floor. The microphones had been turned off, but something remained in the air, an echo that couldn't be swept away. It was the echo of two women, one who spoke and one who couldn't, and the truth that now belonged to everyone. By evening, late-night hosts joked about the drama, while professors called it a cultural reckoning. Talk shows debated endlessly, is silence betrayal or protection? The phrase echoed from Capitol Hill to small-town diners. Older Americans remembered times when keeping quiet felt patriotic. Younger generations called it corruption, disguised as dignity. America was not arguing about politics anymore. It was arguing about conscience. In an editorial the next morning, the Washington Post wrote, "The silence contract is not just a scandal. It is a mirror. Some will see guilt. Others will see survival. But no one will see innocence." And that was the truth Jasmine had forced the country to confront. Back inside the darkened hearing room, long after the cameras stopped rolling, the marble floor still gleamed under the fading lights. It looked clean, but the air still carried the weight of everything said within those walls. The silence remained, but it no longer felt safe. It felt honest. In the story of power and truth, the noise had ended, but the silence was just beginning. When the chamber reconvened for the formal statement, the marble room held its breath like a living thing. Cameras steadied and flags along the wall barely moved in the conditioned air. Jasmine stepped to the microphone, with her red pen resting in her palm like a vow. Her face was calm, but her stance carried a weight that pulled every eye to the dais. She spoke without preamble. Truth doesn't need to be loved. It only needs to be said. A ripple of stillness rolled outward as the words landed and took root. Ushers froze in the aisles and clerks lifted their heads as if hearing a bell. Jasmine did not repeat herself. She let the line expand until it filled the room. There was no flourish, only the clean edge of a verdict that refused theater. The silence that followed felt less like pause and more like permission to finally breathe. Letters began arriving in stacked crates, stamped from counties most maps forget. Many were written on ruled school paper, with patient cursive creased by hands that had decided to speak at last. Jasmine opened them alone in her office and read until sentences blurred. Again and again, the same sentence appeared steady as a drum beat. Thank you for daring to speak for us. Some envelopes held photographs or folded police reports. Others carried nothing but a single signature that had waited decades. On courthouse steps and in library rooms, volunteers gathered to read the letters aloud with care. The voices varied in age and accent, but the rhythm was the same exhausted courage. Some letters were only 2 lines. Some unfolded into pages of years never said aloud. Listeners stood with arms crossed or hands clasped, choosing not to clap because the moment asked for quiet. When the readings ended, people left slower than they came, as if learning a new way to walk. Outside, Melania withdrew from view and left microphones staring at closed doors. Her press office released no statements, and the curtains stayed drawn above the avenue. News vans idled, then drifted away because silence gave them nothing to film. Her absence felt chosen rather than broken, a room locked from within by someone who knew the latch. Reporters turned back to the chamber where the sentence had been spoken and replayed the moment in loops. Universities moved quickly, adding a new unit to courses in law, journalism, and political ethics. Syllabi listed a plain title, The Silence Contract in the Ethics of Public Power. Students watched the testimony in seminar rooms and argued long after the hour ended. They debated where privacy ends and public duty begins, and whether survival can excuse secrecy. Some said the system forced the bargain. Others said the bargain bent the system until it cracked. Faculty panels filled auditoriums as casebooks rushed to print supplemental chapters. Deans convened forums about whistleblowing and the moral price of non-disclosure in public life. Clinic students drafted mock policies for agencies to adopt when truth collides with loyalty. A visiting judge admitted the line between private and public had grown thinner than paper. Everyone agreed the subject was no longer academic, but current and unfinished. Across the country, conversations took shape at kitchen tables and folding chairs in union halls. The old phrase, silence for honor, was lifted and turned under a brighter light. Elders remembered seasons when holding one's tongue felt like shielding the house in a storm. Younger voices asked what roof was worth saving if the foundation rotted beneath it. No one agreed on every point, yet more people admitted that comfort had often been mistaken for dignity. From Melania's story, a plainer truth stepped forward and stood still. Sometimes silence does not save anyone, it kills the truth. People said it softly, first testing whether the sentence could stand on its own legs. Then they repeated it in church basements and community centers, noticing how the room cleared after it was spoken. The idea did not seek punishment, it sought a change in reflex toward honesty. A year unfolded in drafts, hearings edits, and nights where margins were filled by tired hands. Committees argued, amended, and read the text aloud until the language felt clean enough to hold. In a joint session marked by restraint rather than spectacle, Congress passed the Citizen Truth Protection Act. The law barred gag settlements tied to political office and forbade public funds from purchasing private silence. Penalties were set for officials who tried to buy secrecy with the currency of power. Recognition found Jasmine in ways she never chased and did not trust. Newspapers printed profiles, but the photographs always returned to a single image under harsh light. A national magazine named her Woman of the Year and handed her a short stage with a long echo. She spoke briefly about promises made to people who never stand near a microphone. She did not mention names, yet the room understood which promises had finally been kept. Meanwhile, the hearing video refused to fade and instead gathered momentum like weather. Views crossed 100 million, then 200 million, and the counter kept climbing. Teachers assigned it, families watched together, barbershops let it run while clippers hummed. People did not always agree about guilt, but most agreed it mattered to look straight at the record. The most replayed moment was the hush right before the sentence about truth left her mouth. In a high apartment above a gray Manhattan Avenue, Melania learned the shape of quiet days. Neighbors said they rarely saw her, only the brief arrival and departure of a black car. The city carried on beneath her windows while the rooms kept their counsel. One morning, a newspaper ran a column, written without malice or triumph, and a single line settled at its center. Perhaps in the silence she finally heard the sound of justice. The line Jasmine had spoken began to appear above courthouse doors and pinned to office cubicles. It showed up on lecture slides and community bulletin boards between food drives and meetings. People copied it by hand and taped it to refrigerator doors beside calendars and report cards. The sentence gathered no dust, it gathered nerve. When power can buy silence, only truth is rich enough to buy back justice. The quote did not demand outrage so much as endurance, and citizens felt the difference. It asked them to count the price before cashing the check called quiet. It nudged them to look again when a story arrived, trimmed and polished by money. It made space for brave speech that might never be loved but still needed to exist. And somewhere between those words and the long echo, they left a country adjusted its spine. City councils began their meetings by reading the line aloud, and the room's temperature changed. School boards used it to frame hard debates, insisting that silence not be the first tool. Nonprofits printed it on grant packets as a promise to the people they served. Even corporate handbooks borrowed it, a warning against purchasing secrecy with perks. The sentence moved like a lantern through dark corridors, and doors opened because of its light. Thank you for watching until this moment, and for standing with us on this journey for justice. Your support means everything. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what moved you most in this story. Together, our voices make a difference.